Hello, James.
Alexander, how are you doing?
I'm pleased to talk to a master of martial arts, which is you, James.
Okay. I was going to look over my shoulder to see if there's somebody else with me here, but okay.
where are you now, right now? Where are you based?
I'm in Bozeman, Montana. I'm actually in my downstairs office. Right now I live in Bozeman, Montana, and I have a dojo here that we just finished building.
Interesting. Okay. So this is a background interview for people who are interested in learning more about you because you're holding a seminar on the 29th of February until the 1st of March in Köln, Germany. And so we want to get to know you a little bit better. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what different styles of martial arts have you studied?
Okay. I'm going to exclude going to Catholic school with the Irish in the 50s, although I learned a lot. Fighting was very common then, and there was a code, but I learned a lot. I started wrestling in 1960. I've wrestled a bit in high school and college. I coached wrestling. I started studying Shorin Ryoku Nawate in the early 60s, well, almost mid 60s, when I was old enough to have a motorcycle so I could drive across town. And I've studied various styles of karate, kung fu, Filipino arts, arnis, kali, eskrima. I've studied, some judo. I rolled around with the Gracies in their garage in the 80s when nobody knew who they were. I coached my sons to championships. I've done a wide range of things. Russian martial arts, sistema, which is very interesting and very effective. What impacts me most is the study of classical samurai martial arts that really started in 1980. I'd had some exposure to Aikido with a man named B.J. Carlisle Sensei, who was very interesting and a Marine combat veteran from the Pacific Campaign. But he pointed me in the direction of classical arts because it really fit the personality and stuff of someone like myself.
Mm-hmm.
So these arts are fundamentally different because they're arts of war, and most of what we call martial arts don't have anything to do with war. Doesn't mean they're not valuable, because they are. We just should separate the fact, because once you add lethality and you all of a sudden can't, the back and forth that takes place isn't acceptable. In 1968, once in the military, I buried a lot of guys. You see the consequences of war. And back and forth things are very, very, very different, and demand a very different strategy, very different mindset, and very different technical solutions. People will tell me, well, you teach knife fighting. And I go, no, I don't teach knife fighting. I said, you ever been in a knife fight? Let me tell you from personal experience, you don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. Do I teach people, including the best of our special operations community, how to use knives to solve problems in combat? I do, but we don't fight. And people say, well, expect to get cut in a knife fight. I go, well, do you expect to get shot in a gunfight? Mm-hmm. I said, that mentality is not a classical mentality. Mm-hmm. And it starts with sword, because for samurai, sword was the fundamental art that they studied, even though it wasn't a primary battlefield weapon. So all the movements and strategy came from the edge of the blade, so to speak. And the highest level of stuff you were looking at is called otonashi no kachi. Mm-hmm. And it means silent victory, no touching of blades. So when you see movies like The Lost Samurai, 5 Moves to Victory, that's just stupid. Ties, there were ties that were called Aiuchi, mutual killing. Mm-hmm. You train so that there's never a clash or blocking. Mm-hmm. So that takes an enormous amount of inner development to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's not the aggressive, tough stuff that made me a champion kickboxer. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very different,
Having covered so many disciplines, do you want to point out some trainers or senseis that you've studied with?
So, I studied Taekwondo with Pugo Guan. I studied Tang Soo Do with Frank Sclercio Jr., also the kickboxing and stuff. And Frank was the best martial artist that nobody ever heard of, because he was also a doctor of psychology and had another life, but just phenomenal. I learned to box from Bobo Olson as well. Danan J Sensei of Yanagi-ryu was my introduction into classical samurai arts. He was a soke of that system. Yoshida Kenji passed the system on to him. I studied with Mikhail Rabko in Sistema, and Vladimir Vasilyev. I've been in Russia studying. I've been in Misha's house. Studied with Remy Prisus and the Kenyetis in Filipino arts. The last 21 years, I've been studying another Japanese system under Kuroda Tetsuzan, who I would encourage people to go and see some of him on the internet. He has the best of the old classical movement, which is about disappearing. It's about deceiving the mind when the opponent looks at you. It's very sophisticated. And not talking, Kuroda, Kuroda,
mm-hmm.
and then Tetsuzan, Tetzuzan,
mm-hmm.
Blackfield Iron Mountain. Okay. The nice thing with Romaji, the putting Japanese words or sounds into Western alphabet is it's absolutely phonetic. And once you know what the phonetics are, it's a very easy system to.
And having covered so many disciplines, have you actually had fighting exposure in any of these disciplines?
Yes. Well, I had a lot of fighting exposure just starting as a kid. The first time I used a knife for self-defense, I was actually in 6th grade, stabbing somebody for, mostly I just was scared and I wanted to get away from me. Mm-hmm. And so with all of those things, both competitively on the street and in other less permissive environments, I've been able to apply what I know personally. I'm also, we've had almost 20 years of this last conflict. And I've worked with people in our military from all the services and various units and et cetera. So I also get an opportunity when I'm teaching them to get the feedback. How did this work? What happened? Boom, boom, boom. I keep on top of all that, right? Part of it is I have a responsibility to them that what I teach them is actually going to make them safer and allow them to do their job better. So I've been very involved in the practical application side virtually my whole life. Mm-hmm. And I'm still involved on some levels that I can't talk about, but still involved on some levels.
Mm-hmm. But you said that you buried a lot of guys. So you've been part of the U.S. military, or when?
Yeah, I was in United States military from 1966 to 1969. Mm-hmm. I volunteered. I wasn't drafted. So experiences there, various kinds, are really beneficial. Probably the one that has impacted me by far the most was what we called survivor assistance initial notification of death. So, if you see movies, like some of the World War II movies, they used to send telegrams to homes. In Vietnam, especially, pretty early on, an officer or a high-ranking enlisted would have to go and knock on someone's door early in the morning and tell them how bad the Secretary of the Army felt about the death of their son, brother, husband, child, etc. in Vietnam. So because I was in a small base in Los Angeles, and because the population was so large, and because the number of casualties during Big Tet were so many, I did that for a long period of time and a whole lot of people. And I think it gives you a perspective on the cost of war way more than almost anything else can. I mean, the warrior's dead. He's gone. Whether he was your brother or not in the process, he's gone. But when you look at the impact on the people at our home, and it's going to be lifelong, you really need to think about, if you're going to get into something, and if you're going to put rules of engagement, et cetera, that actually allow you to solve the problem and put your people in the best position to win and come home alive. And America, we haven't seen that for a long time. In my personal opinion, the rules of engagement and lack of strategy and everything during the last 20 years is really a shame.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story again.
It's an interesting story, but that's a whole nother story. So out of that vast amount of disciplines and sensei's and trainers that you've trained with, you've created your own system.
Well, so I would say not created, even if some of the techniques I wasn't taught exactly. So how it works, especially from classical. So,
But what's the name of it?
So Nami Ryu Aiki Heiho. So Nami means wave, recognizing that energy travels in waves at every level of universe reality. We're not going to get into electron jump because we don't understand it anyway. Aiki is an aspect of mind body that's hard to define. It's a whole different way of accessing your physiology, your psychology, and physical reality. You know, the laws of physics. Okay, manifest will of God. However you want to look at it, we're all subject to it. However you want to look at it, and it takes a deep inner change in order to access your physicality different ways. So strength, leverage, none of that applies. It seems counterintuitive because our fundamental intuition is based on fear. I call that normal movement. Okay, and you know, it can be used. I always tell people I was an undefeated kickboxer in the 70s, not because I wasn't afraid. I was afraid, but my fear was failure. So if you hurt me, it brought me closer to my fear. It was like throwing gasoline on a fire. It didn't put it out. It made me fight harder. But that's a very low level of access for human beings. It was kind of like an itch I had to scratch for lots of reasons. But when I, finally got done with that, it doesn't give you anything else in your life, if that makes sense. Okay, I beat a bunch of guys, big deal, right? So I started looking around, and I went to Aikido for a little while. BJ Carlisle Sensei, who was a World War II combat Marine, badly wounded on Guadalcanal. And actually, you'd get a kick out of this because he was light heavyweight champion in the Marine Corps boxer at stuff as well. And he finally pointed me to Yanagi Ryu. And I started studying classical samurai military arts, which was a whole different study, right? And so that led me down a different path, and it required a lot of inner change, which I was resistant to. I mean, it took me a long time to climb to the top of an alpha male food chain.
So is your system rather an outer path, so learn to dominate the outer world, or is it an inner path, learn to dominate
It's an inner path.
It's an inner
right? Path. It's an inner path. And it's a very deep inner path. And the interesting thing with it is you have to get out of your own way. You have to let go of your fears. You have to let go of all the responses that made me really good at one point of doing those things. And yet in an engagement, and I'm talking engagements where lethality is present, it's far superior. And it's counterintuitive at first because we build our primary function out of all these things out of fear.
Yeah.
Okay. And so here you have to recognize, let go fears. Some of them are really good because, you're carrying this baggage around. It's actually bad for your health. I'm going to do some more talks and stuff, not just with business people on this and how to make it work better for them, but on health. So I'm in my 70s. I'm not nobody thinks I'm that old when they see me. My function, if you watch me walk, move, do anything, doesn't look like that. And around 65, I started thinking, well, why is that? And it's the inner work of releasing fears, right? Exposing them, releasing them. What I find now is if I have a serious problem to solve, the less James involved, the better it works.
Of course.
Right? Getting myself out of the way. But getting yourself out of the way is a process. It takes a lot of inner development to do. And it's not easy to do that. And that includes physically handling people, whatever it happens to be, whether it's shooting, physically handling them, whatever has to be done. And so I look at, well, what do fears do? Like if you touch your grandmother's back, it feels like a turtle, because the contraction of muscles that takes place, the posture, when you look at people, you can see the fears. And a lot of them aren't conscious, this moment fears. They're things that started in your childhood even, that you're not even conscious of. Okay.
So is
And
it fair to say that you're using martial arts forms in order to, first of all, clean away emotional baggage and then access inner layers or deeper layers of your existence?
I would say yes. And I've had a lot. I was in a Saivite Hindu monastery after I got out of the military for a while. Meditation and stuff, very familiar with that. The thing that the martial art that I'm doing gives is it gives a cause and effect. Is this working or not? Is it working against somebody that's skilled that doesn't want it to work against them? So you have a backboard to know if you're just in an inner journey that is very subjective and there's no objective cause and effect to tell you if it's right or not, or if it's actually correct. So by getting that, it's really beneficial, and it's a process, and I'm still in the process. I'm getting better. I'm able to handle younger, stronger, faster people with this in ways that don't make any sense to them, but they know that it works because whatever needs to be done got done. Yeah. So I want to also bring this out to people for health and well-being. I mean, personal security and safety is fundamental to us, number one. Yeah. Okay. Fighting, doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're in a fight, there's no safety in a fight, whether you win or not, whether you're a lot better. If you put yourself in a position in a fight and it's not a sport or your business, which is not very many people in the world, is it their business, then why are you in this situation, right? So health and well-being are really important. And so it's also all your reactions to things, your reaction to the news, your reaction to all the stuff that takes place, has a huge impact on people. And you get emotional about the news, and your biases start taking over because they feed that. I mean, they sell fear. They don't sell information. They sell fear and bias. Well, that's really bad for you. Actually, it's bad for your physiology. Things that wouldn't be a big deal if it only happened a little bit, but over time, little secretions and stuff in your body and posture and muscles constantly being tense so blood can't flow through them properly. All of those things over time wear on you. So this practice actually, because posture and letting go of all that is absolutely critical, and you get a cause and effect when you're working with other people or other circumstances, allows you to deal with those fears. Yeah. And either release them or put them in a place where you understand why they're there and they can be beneficial to you. Because on one level, fear is a fundamentally necessary survival mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you're walking in Africa and you see something that's making this type of movement, it's dangerous to you, right? If you're in the ocean, it's a shark, right? If you're around the rivers and some of the other things, it's gators or crocs there, excuse me. And if it's on land, they've got a whole bunch of snakes that are really bad, and some of them are really fast. And so, those types of reasonable fears are beneficial to you. But the anxiety-based fears, especially outside of your immediate ability to control, stuff that, like, say, the news puts out because it makes them money, those things aren't good for you. Those things are bad, and they wear on you over time. And the contracted muscles that they cause and all these fear things that people aren't even, aware of, well, that's not good for you. And it really makes you old before your time.
A summary would be it aims for health and well-being. It aims for release of fears that don't help you. It serves self-defense in ways that are counterintuitive. Is that a fair summary?
I think so. And I always look at this as solutions.
Okay.
Whether the solutions are what we call kinetic, high speed projectiles on people, or where the solution is looking down a street and saying, I'm not going to walk down there. Or whether the solution is I need to pay a little more attention to my posture and relax and not let all these, right? It's about solutions, not about fighting.
Okay.
And that, again, can cover anything that happens for the human being, because we don't know those things. as a large, strong, capable male, you know, when I walk down the street, I'm constantly looking for situations, but mostly I'm looking for situations. Can I help? You know, if I see a woman or a child or somebody being compromised, well, I look at it as my responsibility to help them. I think I told you earlier, I'm getting more involved in counter human trafficking. Well, a whole bunch of that will also be working with females and even children and teach them how to avoid situations like that, what tools to carry, you know. And really, the male's responsibility, and especially the warrior's responsibility, is to protect and defend the innocent.
Yeah.
You know, the scroll on the left side of the kamis on my dojo says Satsujin Ken, Katsujin Ken. Satsujin Ken means the killing sword. Katsujin Ken means a life-giving sword. And a lot of modern derivations really like the life-giving sword. And it took me 2 years. It took us as a Ryuha 2 years to get a Shodo master who would write that for us, because there's a lot of what the Japanese call kami in the killing sword, Satsujin Ken. And I finally got Kondo Sensei out of Kyoto to write those characters. But I had to send a long letter. I'm like, Sensei, there is no life-giving sword without the sword that cuts down evil. Okay? You cannot protect the innocent by not taking out the bad people. And not recognizing that there's evil in the world is a denial with a lot of people.
The best trick of the devil was to make the people think that he doesn't exist.
Yes. Too true. Because that type of deception, and used by politicians and
Unbelievable.
systems and everything else,
Unbelievable.
is so apparent and so out there. And yet the denial of people because of fears and their emotions not to want to recognize it leads human beings down a path that we've been way too many times.
Yeah, agreed. So what's the ideal student? Who does it cater for?
So, you know, I have, there is no one from my standpoint. Like, I do women's self-defense stuff. I've worked with children before. I've worked with our most elite, and still am, most elite special operations people. It's people who want to find a more effective, efficient way of problem solving. And the problems aren't outside of you most of the time. Most of the problems are in here. And if you deal with these, one, you'll run into a lot less problems on the outside. And if you do, you'll have more efficient solutions for those problems. So I've worked with people who are old, so to speak. A lot of them are not my age, but they're still there. And how do you go back in and start releasing some of this fear? Okay. How do you relax these muscles? How do you regain posture? How do you do the inner work that's actually going to make your life fuller, safer, and healthier? You know, I have a big thing with males. We have a prime genetic directive to protect females and children. We're expendable. Women and children are not expendable. I mean, it's just the fundamentals of how we are on this plane, right? And those males that don't protect that, well, then their society either fails or somebody else takes over. And if every man out there, you know, had some capability and some awareness, then the women would be enormously safer. And it doesn't have to be fighting. Years ago, we were at Fort Benning in Georgia and teaching an iteration, and I had to go to the shopping mall at night, and so as I'm getting in my car, I hear high heels, and I stop. So if women are walking someplace at night like that, I'll stop and just wait till they get in their car. So I look, and here's a young woman coming, you know, high heels dress, walking along, and it wasn't very well lit. And so I kind of scan the parking lot. There's a guy standing next to the van. I keep scanning around. I scan back, and this guy's still standing next to the van. He's not getting in. In the van, she's going to walk by. It's like a corner. And I think, if I do my Southern here, that ain't right. So, you know, I look back at her. I look at him. He's listening to the heels. I pulled a flashlight out of my pocket, lit him up. Up, boom, out across the parking lot. Now, do you have to be a martial arts guy to do that?
No.
Oh, all you had to do was shine the light, right? We could get biblical here. All I had to do was shine the light on him and he was gone. She doesn't even know I was looking out for her. Okay. And so little things like that, they're everywhere. And it adds to your life in the process. You have these skills, you have this capability, and you can help make people safe. And so for me, this is a daily practice. I teach that. Another huge thing is courtesy. Be courteous to people. If I could paraphrase a little, fear is contagious. But as William Tecumseh Sherman said, but courage is not less so. Courtesy is contagious. Rudeness is contagious, but courtesy is also contagious. So to treat people with respect. Hold doors for women. In the modern, some of them get all, if they've got an issue with that, that's their problem, not mine. I'm not holding the door because they can't open it or they're weak. I'm holding it because I respect and honor them, right? I'm showing courtesy for who they are in society. And these types of things we can do all the time, everywhere, and it makes a society much better. So, you can practice this. It's not about going to the dojo and learning how to cut things better, punch somebody better, throw them on the ground, or going to the range and learn how to shoot better. This is this type of stuff that you do all the time, every day, and it makes everything better in the process.
Sounds like a holistic approach to me, James.
It's, for me, this is my life. And, especially as you go down life, you realize that it's what you give that makes it worth it, not what you have or what you take. A bigger house, a nicer car is like of no value to me. What's of value to me is, can I help other people in various ways? You know?
Interesting. Very, very.
You make your life from what you give.
Very.
Right. In that sense.
Well, it was a pleasure talking to you. I learned a lot, James. Unfortunately, won't be able to make it to the seminar, but I hope to meet you once personally.
Well, it won't be the last time I'm in Europe.
Okay.
And Vienna is very interesting to me. I haven't been there. I took the train through Austria from Germany a few years ago to go see relatives in Slovenia. My grandfather, my mom's dad, came from what's now Slovenia, a little village called Gorenja Sušice, close to the Croat border. So we have relatives there, and it looked beautiful. But getting out on a train station is not visiting a country. Yeah. So I would love to visit.
Next time you shoot me a mail and I'll show you around.
Okay, that sounds excellent.
Yeah. Thanks for the interview, James.
Thank you, Alexander.